All right, everyone. Welcome to our quarter three 2025 52 Hike Challenge check-in and meeting. And we're really grateful to our sponsors this year, Oboes and REI, that help us to um, provide educational experiences and opportunities. And we're very thankful today because we have a couple of really wonderful people here. And we've already started with our welcome for the day. You all shared where you've been hiking and also what things you've picked up if you are participating in the Earth series, or maybe just picking up trash when you're on the trails. And so now I'm going to have Petula. Austin is joining us from Petula, and he's going to talk to us about winter hiking. After winter hiking, we're going to have botany basics with Morgan, and then we'll just have some quick Q&A at the end. So save your questions. You can actually share your questions in the chat, and then Austin will get to them at the end of his portion, and same with Morgan. So without further ado, I'm going to give it up to Austin, and he's going to talk about winter hiking. So take it away, Austin.
Awesome. Thanks, Carla. Yeah, let me am I able to share screen? It looks like share is disabled. If not, I can also send you the
I've
um
just made you a co-host.
okay.
Apologies.
Perfect. There we go. Cool. Give me just a second. I'll pull this up. All right. All right. So, yeah, my name's Austin. I am the Events and Community Engagement Associate at Catula, and I'm based in Flagstaff, Arizona, where Catula is based. And as you can see there, Catula was founded in 1999, so it's been yeah, a little over 25 years now that we've been around. So we're a pretty small company based in Flagstaff. So I'll give a little bit of a background just on Catula real quick, and then we'll kind of go into some of the winter hiking tips and the gear that we make that helps you get out hiking in the winter. So see, there we go. So yeah, I kind of already touched on some of that. Katula means directly in Tibetan, and our owner is still involved with the company. He was born and raised in Flagstaff, so the company started here and is still based. We like to celebrate the positive potential of people and empower them to go directly where they want to go. So that's kind of the mission behind the company. So the inspiration of why our owner Danny founded the company was, yeah, 31 years ago. He was on a climbing trip in the Dolomites. He had a fall, slipped on some ice, and slid about 600 feet and hit a rock wall on the way down the steep gully. Luckily, he was just kind of ended up with some bruises and scrapes and stuff, and was really okay. Which was kind of really lucky. It could have been a lot worse, and that sort of inspired him to create a packable and lightweight traction device that you can wear on your feet that will prevent you from experiencing something like that, a fall like that. And so that was let's see. So he invented the KTS crampon, which is our first product. It is a crampon, but it's kind of unique because it's most crampons are for like mountaineering, are meant to be put on like very non-flexible mountaineering boots that are real big. They don't bend at all. So this is a way to be able to have that traction, but you can put it on regular hiking boots or even shoes, like hiking shoes, trail runners, that type of thing. And so that's a photo of our owner Danny from, I don't know when that photo was taken, but kind of the early days when that was our first product. So it's evolved quite a bit since then, and we introduced the micro spikes, and that is kind of what most people know us for. That's what's in that photo right there. So that is kind of a much more uh, just more common use than most people don't need full on crampons with really big spikes. So this is a sort of an in between to be able to have something that's really lightweight, packable, but will give you really good traction. And then this is just a little slide. This is all our staff. So we have about 20 staff members. Most of them are based in Flagstaff, but we do have a few that are that work remote in other states. But just this is just to kind of show that we're a small company, and so we're just kind of trying to do what we can to get you all out on the trails and being safe. Um, so just a few quick winter hiking tips, just generally. So winter hiking kind of prevents a lot of new challenges that you don't experience in the other times of year. Um, and those, can I'll touch on them, but there's just a lot of things that you need to consider and pack than you would need to in the summertime when the weather is a lot more comfortable. So layers, obviously, just having a lot of layers and options is great because it's very easy to start a hike really cold and layered up, and then within 10 or 15 minutes of hiking, all of a sudden you're sweating and you're so hot. So being able to just have multiple lighter layers that you can take off as you need to or put more on. um, Prioritizing keeping your feet and hands warm, so just making sure you have really good gloves and wool socks. I grew up in Phoenix, and then I've been in Flagstaff, so I had to learn all this stuff of having the right gear, and it can take a while to kind of figure out what gloves and socks and work for you. And once you find it, it really is great. But I've found that my hands and feet get cold really easily. A lot of other people's don't. And so finding what you need is really important, and how heavy of and thick of gloves and socks you need. Wool is also great because it still keeps you warm when it's wet, and it doesn't get stinky. So I love wool. um, Waterproof footwear is a great option. So like Gore-Tex, hiking boots or trail runners are a great option. We also make waterproof gaiters, which I'll touch on later. And then traction devices, obviously, which I'll talk about more, and specifically what we offer and the different applications and terrain you might use them in. Then just bringing plenty of food and water. Eating helps you stay warm. So that's a big thing because if you're it's just burning calories helps your body stay warm. And don't ask me too many questions on that because I'm not an expert, but it's something that I know and I've learned just through my experience, and it'll keep you moving and yeah, get you where you need to go. And then just setting conservative goals when you first start out on winter hikes, because it is a bit different. There's a lot different things to consider, as I've said. So just like trying it out on a short hike, and maybe going out for an hour and seeing how that goes, testing out your gear, and then that way you can kind of go back and assess what you might need to change or do differently, and rather than going out for a huge hike and hoping everything goes well, because you never know sometimes until you've used a piece of gear if it's going to work or not. Um, Moving on. So moving on to our traction products. So I mentioned the micro spikes. And those are our most popular, most what we're most well known for. So you'll see that's kind of our most aggressive of our stretch on traction. And when I say stretch on traction, that's what I'm going to touch on here. That doesn't include the crampons. So the crampons are more aggressive, but I think for this crowd, these are going to be what you're going to most likely want. If you have questions about the crampons, happy to talk about that. But um, so the micro spikes on the left there are meant for like steep mountainous terrain where you really need to make sure you have great traction. So thinking any like steep mountainous trails that are going to be covered in a sheet of ice, or um, have steep drop offs or anything like that that you just like really want to make sure you have solid footing. That's and the steepness is actually kind of one of the more important factors there. Um, and the reason I say that is because the exo spikes, the one in the middle there, is a lot more versatile, but they're not going to give you as good of traction on um, steep terrain. So the micro spikes have you can see the stainless steel spikes there, give you great traction. The exo spikes have a tungsten carbide tips on them, so they don't look as like they would give you as good of traction, but it actually still gives you great traction, just not as in steep terrain, as I said. Tungsten carbide is actually the same material that's used on the tips of hiking poles, and so it's super durable. And so the nice thing about the exo spikes is that you can use them on trails, on roads, and if you're going in between, patches of ice and snow where you might be going on dirt or a road or something like that, but you don't want to have to keep taking your spikes on and off. That was kind of why the exo spikes were created, was so you can keep them on. They're comfortable to walk on, even on hard surfaces. Um, and then they're also a lot lighter, and with that tungsten carbide, it's so durable, you're not going to damage the spikes if you're on rocks or hard surfaces like a road. So that's one of I probably use that the most actually in the winter, unless I'm going in really steep terrain. That's just the most versatile, and it's a lot lighter, which is kind of nice. And then the nano spikes might be less, useful for this crowd if you're mostly doing hiking. However, that is probably the most like kind of urban product we make. So it has the tungsten carbide tips. It has less spikes of the tungsten carbide tips, um, but it's only meant for like flat, hard surfaces. So think just sidewalks and roads, walking around your neighborhood or running. But those are you don't want to use those on a trail. So just mention those because yeah, just in case anybody wants to use them. I mean, they're great for, even walking your dog and stuff like that, which is a lot of the times it is nice to have that option because sometimes it's just really icy and even getting out to walk around the neighborhood is treacherous. So, um, and oops, sorry. Hang on, I lost my screen. Okay, there we go. Um, Sorry, hang on one sec. I don't know what I did. Oh, I lost my screen. Um, Hmm, okay, sorry. Let me reshare again. Sorry about that. And I can't see the chat right now, so just a heads up, I will look through those questions and answer them after I'm done with this. Okay, now we're good. Sorry about that. So this is our newest traction device called the Microspikes Ghost. So this is kind of exciting. We just released this in the last like month, and so this has kind of been a project on the back burner for a long time with our product designers, but they finally made it happen, and we're able to figure out how to make basically just a very light, ultra light version of the Microspikes. So this has almost identical spikes. They're stainless steel, but this weighs 43% lighter than micro spikes, um, because you don't have the chains, as you'll see. I'll go back real quick. Yeah, so in the micro spikes, you can see there's stainless steel chains. So on the micro spikes Ghost, it's a TPU material. So a lot of people question whether it's durable. It might not look like it, but it is a very durable material. And this has a 4-year warranty. So if anything does break, we will cover it for 4 years. So we stand by the durability of these. So this is kind of more for, I mean, this is our premium product. So it's our highest price point of any of the stretch on traction. So you are paying for that, ultralight uh, feature of this product. So that's mostly what you're paying for, is the lightweight nature of this. And it's really for people, kind of geared towards more like trail runners, people that, I mean, even if you just don't really want to carry the weight and you want to spend the extra money, that's great. Um, but like through hikers, really want to have the lightest weight a lot of the time. So just wanted to point this out since this is kind of new and exciting. Um, for most people, I'd say the micro spikes and exo spikes will probably be what you need, one of the two, depending on what terrain you're going on. But just wanted to highlight this too, because it's just exciting and cool that we have this out and on the market now. So if you are interested in that, you should start seeing these in like your local retailers, so local outdoor gear shops. REI should be getting them. Yeah, on our website, stuff like that. So, um, and then going to our gaiters, which I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of a nice addition to your waterproof footwear in the winter. So the Levigators on the left there, those are just like a really lightweight Gore-Tex waterproof gaiter. Um, and then we have the Navigators in the middle. So those are going to be those the Levigator and Navigator are pretty similar. The main difference is that the Navigator is just a more durable fabric. So that bottom half of the Navigator that's black, that's a ballistic nylon. So it's a really tough material. It's meant to be able to take like strikes from crampons or, kicking on a rock or something like that. So that's the main difference there. They're both waterproof. Um, and great for if you're going in deep snow, especially where you want to keep your pants dry as well. And those are what I go towards when we get like big dumps of snow here in Flagstaff, and I still want to be able to get out on the trails. And then the Renegators, those are not waterproof, but they're water resistant. So those can be good for kind of like light snow. I've used those in, yeah, when the snow's kind of drier and it's not as heavy and it's not super deep, those can be great as well. They still keep the snow out of your shoes, and they'll still keep you pretty dry as long as it's not super wet snow. But all three of those are great options. The Navigators are the highest price point. The Levigators come in two heights, as you can see, so a mid and a tall, and then the Renegators come in a low and a mid height. And the Renegators are great for summer or kind of all season use, really, um, because they're still breathable, but they're really durable. So great for all types of hiking and outdoor adventures. And that's it. So here, I'll stop sharing. And I think I saw some messages, but if anybody has any questions, I don't know if Carla, if you want to do questions now or if you want to wait till the end, either way
Yeah,
works for
we
me.
we can
So
have the questions now. So,
awesome.
someone said, let's see, I did see one particular question. Oh, okay. So someone's, I guess their traction device or spikes came off and lost when they post hold and Bryce a few years ago. Which ones would you
Yeah.
recommend for northern Michigan where there is snow and often icy conditions on regular trails?
So yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times the terrain is really gonna what dictates what you choose. So if you're doing like, yeah, again, trails that aren't really steep, but they're still icy. I would probably go with the Exo spikes just because they're the most versatile. So if you want to be able to kind of have one spike that can do, I don't want to say all, but most, then that would be a good option. If you want to be able to have like different options, you could get the micro spikes for when you like are going in the mountains and you really want the traction on steeper trails. And then you could always have like the exo spikes as well for more just kind of even around town use or just more casual trails. So really that's what I kind of tell people is like the steepness of the trail. So if you're really going steep, you really need good traction like for your safety, then I'd go the micro spikes. But otherwise exo spikes can do most other things.
And then Sherry asks about pricing. She says, what is the price range for the new micro spikes versus the original? And also maybe
Mhm.
some pricing on the gators.
Yeah, great questions. So the Microspikes Ghost are going to be our most expensive. They're 103.95 right now on our website. So that should be the price everywhere you see them. Um, and then I'm just going to pull up our website just real quick so I don't misspeak on the pricing. But so the Micro Spikes, the regular ones, those are 83.95 right now. The Exo Spikes are 73.95, and then the Nano Spikes are 63.95. So kind of another nice thing about the Exo Spikes is just that they're a little bit cheaper. Um, and then for the Gators, let me pull that up real quick. So the Navigators, which were the tall ones, the really durable ones, those are 85.95. And then the Levigators, depending on the height you choose, the mid height are $80.95, and the tall ones are $90.95. We also do have some past season of the navigators and levigators on the website, and those are 50% off. So right now the past season navigators are only 40 bucks and the levigators are around that as well. So we also have some renegators that are 50% off on our website. So that's just on our website. So that's just catula.com. But there's some good deals if you go to the Gators page and scroll all the way down. And the past season is really like mostly colors are different, but otherwise they're pretty much the same. The material is slightly different on the navigators and levigators, but not much. So I think you for that savings, it's definitely worth your while. So just a little pro tip there, save you some money.
If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question. I just want to thank you, Austin, for sharing your gear, which actually I do believe, Catula, while they're not a financial sponsor of 52, they have actually supported us with giveaway items, and they help us to support our leadership team with giveaways and things of that sort. So we are very grateful to them. But also just a personal story. I'm new to hiking in the snow, and I have fallen when I did not have my micro spikes on, and um, it is really dangerous. You don't realize that you could be thinking you're on a very basic hike where there's snow, but the last thing you realize is that there could be ice where you step, and one slip can really not only injure you really badly, but we've throughout our years of working in this space had friends, slip down a mountain. And my biggest thing is you need to have the right gear. You can get out in any season, you can hike in any weather, but you need to have the right gear and have the education on it. And I do think that the product that Petula makes is really a good product. I use it myself, but not only that, it can be a life-saving piece of gear. And that's why we really appreciate them, helping us with what we do and also sharing their product as well. So looks like we have another comment here or question. It can be flat in this area of Minnesota, but you can walk in sheets of thick ice. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I'd probably go with either the exo spikes or the nano spikes. Um, the exo spikes, if you want to be able to use them on trails and the roads, if you kind of are just on flat surfaces, you can go with the nano spikes. Um, the main advantage of, I would say, the nano spikes over the exo spikes on flat terrain is that the nano spikes are just lower profile, so they're just going to be a little bit more comfortable. But the exo spikes are kind of striking that balance to be able to, they're still be comfortable, but you feel the spikes a little bit more under your foot. So if you want the versatility in trails and roads, then the exo spikes would be the way to go. And that way you only have to buy one pair of spikes and you can kind of use them for anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Austin, I think we're pretty done. If anyone else has anything else, I'm sure Austin will stay on for a little bit and can jump in the chat. I would love to get the community's recommendations on gloves for Steph, who says, she has a really hard time with her hands during the winter, and she has some questions about gloves. I do want to say that there are so many different options out there when it comes to gloves. I would say, you want to make sure your gloves are waterproof, that they're going to have, and sometimes don't even underestimate the power of having your liners and then doing a mitt on top. That could be another option. Um, there's a lot of brands. Outdoor Research has great gloves. Trying to think what other companies and brands. If anyone wants to chime in, like this is the time. I love all of us being able to give our feedback as well. So we'll just take a few moments for that. Morgan says she's a huge fan of hand knit woolen mittens and mitten liners. Thanks, Morgan. Oh, Steph says she's bought a lot of gloves, but the only thing that has helped her is the hand warmers. Yeah, I mean, that's also another thing, right? Like sometimes I've had to have hand warmers as well. So that's important, but definitely look at waterproof gloves for sure, especially because you never know, like if rain comes in or it's really wet out there, that's gonna affect, how comfortable you are. Austin says he uses a smart wool liner with a big mitten. Yeah, that works really well for people. I also heard of another brand that does kind of like a claw glove. I forget the name of the company right now though. And it's supposed to help because if your hands are together, that'll kind of help keep some of that warmth in there. I just don't remember the name of this glove though. Sherry said she bought heated gloves. And don't forget too that you can always do go online and do a couple of reviews on like top winter hiking gloves. Look at reviews on rei.com or whatever your outdoor retailer is. Those are some helpful things. All right, everyone. Without further ado, I'm going to have Morgan jump on, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Morgan. I actually met her on a hike that I hosted here in New Mexico. It was decided to do a hike that was I'm sorry that I'm here and there's a doggy barking. So but anyhow, I'll try to be quick. So I was hosting a networking hike. Morgan had just moved here and she ended up teaching us all about the local plants. So Morgan is a consulting botanist at Abbott Botanical Assessments. She holds education certifications and over a decade of experience related to scientific education, urban forestry, botany, plant ecology, and relational services. She connects rural and urban communities to their shared natural resources through comprehensive scientific education, career pathways, land management, plans, and mentorship. She celebrates the intersection of plants, water, and people through cultivating community relationships and intergenerational knowledge. Her current biological expertise includes plants in the Intermountain West, Southwest, and Texas, while incorporating their multicultural names, uses, and ecological relevance across geological time and geographic space. So without further ado, I'm going to have Morgan join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla, and thank you, Austin, for that great presentation. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay. All right. So, as Carla described, I'm a consulting botanist. I have a degree in botany from Utah Valley University, but I've worked a lot of different jobs. I work in an office mostly now, but previously I did a lot of work doing field work. And when I give presentations, I always like to highlight local plants. So right now it is chamisa season or rabbit brush season here in Santa Fe. Sorry, my cat is on my lap and she's not happy I'm talking. Um, it's chamisa season here in Santa Fe. So I like highlighting some of the plants that we've got here, and we're going to be talking a little bit about it. For this, since we've got people from all over the country, I thought going over very basic information about plants and how to connect with plants on your hikes, especially if you're wanting to include family or relatives, kids, older folks in your community, and getting them excited about being outside. In the last couple of years, I've been working mostly in urban communities and ex-urban communities, doing urban forestry, especially in Texas. I was working in College Station as partnership coordinator for the urban forestry program. And the longer I've been there, like I grew up in Utah, I grew up in the West. My family was hiking, camping all over. It was very normal for us to do that. But living in a place where a lot of people haven't had those opportunities because there's no public land, really opened my eyes into how folks need some guidance on how to do that. It doesn't come naturally for some people to connect with plants. So that's something I'm going to teach y'all a little bit about here. So I'm going to get right to it. The way I like to describe it, and we're going to just break it up into three big categories. First is recognizing plant patterns, then sensory exploration, and then also embracing play. That is a huge part of anytime you come outside, and really building that relationship, but not, having to be serious about it all the time. I'm a scientist, but it's also important to have fun with it too. Okay, so first off, plant patterns. I've got some examples here of, just some photos I found online of some common plants, and these are really showy, and these aren't typically the kind of plants you're going to be seeing out, on rural trails, but it also gives you some kind of ideas to think about as you're walking around. Even in the winter, you can, I've got a book right here called Winter Botany, actually. If you guys are wanting to learn a little bit more about some of these plant patterns without reproductive parts, because that's one of the ways that we identify plants is through their reproductive parts, is actually arguably the most important, but they're not available during all times of year, especially for trees. So this lets you look at some of the vegetative qualities and habitat qualities of some trees that'll help you ID them. That's just a book that I like to use. But here we've got a couple of different species. We've got lilies, we've got forget-me-nots, we've got sunflower, we've got peony, and we've got rose. Now these are going to be your typical garden plants that you see. But they all have different things in common. So we've got lilies, they've got 6 petals, they've got male and female reproductive parts. With asters, the first thing you think of when you think of an aster is probably a sunflower. That's really how you describe it, is you come across and you've got a couple different petals, and there's all these very specific botanical terms that we use. But in general, what we want to start doing when we're walking and wanting to identify things, we start counting their parts. So like, I don't know if you guys have small children or you work with kids, but a lot of kids just like counting stuff. It's really fun. They're practicing their hands and their numbers, but even adults like it too. And when you start getting into like maybe asters or something, we've got a fun acronym called DYA, dang yellow asters. They're very hard to identify because you have to count all of the petals and you have to flip them over and do all this crazy stuff to try and find these very specific species. But as you go through that, it's a very meditative practice. It can help, ground yourself as you're walking through. And I'm not saying, go and pick a bunch of wildflowers. But you can also just sit next to a wildflower and just count the petals. You can sit next to a tree and count its needles. You can sit next to a shrub and count how many berries it has or how many seeds one of those berries has. You can count how many birds are coming to that. There's a lot of different ways to do that. But the big overarching themes we're discussing are mostly looking at reproductive structures, the stamens, the stigmas, the petals, the vegetative qualities, which are your leaves, if it's opposite or alternate branching. And we're also looking for clues about the habitat. So if you're going into a, hiking trail, there's a difference when you're up in the mountains compared to along a stream or in the desert. There's going to be different plants in each of those places, and starting to recognize, oh, I saw that plant back here, but I didn't see it at the river. I wonder why that is. Why did I see it up on the mountain but not in the river? Why did I see it in town but not out of town? And then you're probably going to start noticing more and more plants that you do find in town or out of town. And that can also help us understand these ecological relationships as well around native, invasive species that are in our communities, and each have different qualities to them as well. So that's kind of I could do like a whole lecture series on that. But to suffice it to say, just looking at plant patterns and seeing what patterns you're noticing is a huge, wonderful start to seeing what you can do for your kind of augment your hike. The next thing I like to talk about, recently, in the last 2 years, I was certified as a nature and forest therapy guide. So what that means is I teach people how to kind of be outside and relax and geared down from our very turbulent world, where it's hard to sometimes find peace, and learn how to ground in very busy spaces. So you can go to a public park, you can go anywhere that you can think of where there's plants. And the best thing about being on the planet Earth is that there's always plants around. It's wonderful. But you can always use your sensory experiences to guide your relationship with plants when you're outside. So once again, this is a close-up of a plant, and it's the one we talked about earlier. It's chamisa or rabbit brush, Ericameria nauseosa. But it's actually a very fragrant plant. You wouldn't necessarily expect that when you come up on it. It's in the sunflower family, Asteraceae, and its leaves can sometimes smell tropical, sometimes they can smell oily, sometimes the flowers can smell very sweet, other times they can smell a little sour. It really just depends on the individual plant or even the population it's in, its access to water, things like that. But as you're taking, you can, you know, especially with these plants that grow along like roadsides, typically it's okay to interact with. I don't say, don't go out into like the mountains or a very sensitive area or on public land where there are very specific collecting rules. But, along the sidewalk on your way to school or um, dropping off somebody or waiting for an appointment, just looking at the plants around you is a lot of fun. Just taking the time to take in the smells, how it feels. So on leaves, especially for botanists, we love hairs. That's like you talk to any botanist, they're gonna be like, we have a number of ways to share how many hairs a plant has. Um, so that's always fun. There's all sorts of different structures on there. And if you get a loop, a hand lens, or even just like a little magnifying glass, or if you've got, I've seen one of my friends, she's got a pretty strong prescription, and what she does sometimes is she can kind of mess with her glasses to like zoom in a little bit, which is kind of fun. Um, but going in and like taking apart the structures and feeling the textures and the smells, sometimes with plants, you can also taste them too. Most of the plants you interact with, and I'm not saying go out and just like put random plants in your mouth or like feed them to the people you care about. But most of them are going to be pretty safe to interact with. It's very rare that there's going to be an issue. Obviously, don't pick things that you know aren't safe, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I've got some resources for you to help you kind of decide like what's available in your area and how to determine what's safe and what's not. And then also just using your eyes, what colors are you seeing when you're going around in your community? Are you seeing a lot of yellow flowers? Are you seeing a lot of pink flowers? Do you see a lot of white flowers? What's the rarest flower color that you've seen? Um, Conversely, when we're identifying plants, we don't really use color when we're identifying plants just because they vary so much. If you think of hydrangeas, if you change the soil pH, it's going to drastically affect the color of that plant. And that can happen across populations. So you have two plants of the same species a couple feet away from each other, and they might be different colors from a number of different reasons. But it's still nice to appreciate them too. And then also something I like to point out is that we actually don't really know the sound of wind. It's actually what we hear is trees moving in the wind. We're hearing the leaves move in the wind. And that's also a nice way to connect. It's like, what are we, how do we connect our senses in all ways, but not just, our main ones. And hearing is an under-resourced one. Also insects. Sometimes you can hear insects and birds and all sorts of interesting things, especially if you go at night. And finally, embracing play is huge. Some of the ways that we play, I'm just going to throw one out there. Why we're all pretty much here tonight is hiking. I really love embracing hiking as a form of play and going out and having the opportunity to meet all these different plants from all over the world. So New Mexico is the fourth most biodiverse uh, state in the continental United States. So we've got all these very interesting microclimates, and wherever you go, you're really going to find some cool stuff. And there's many places like that across the U.S., across the world, even in rural and in urban communities. There's always an opportunity to find a cool little plant somewhere and meet that plant. I always recommend going with a friend. You can make tea. You can do a lot of different things. I like painting as well. You can bring like a little like Crayola watercolor set with you and like just a brush of some kind. You can bring your camera with you, get some really good close-up photos, and then you can post them on iNaturalist if you want to know like the idea of those plants too, which is a lot of fun. There's a lot of different ways to play. and just going in and having it, an open heart and an open mind and saying, where are the plants going to take me today? Let your curiosity lead you. And it's a great way to create that relationship with plants. So the take home points I have for you guys. There's a few ways to make a short list of safe common plants. I always recommend making like a 10 short list. Frequently we have a lot of invasive species in our communities, and while I don't like saying plants are bad, certain plants are bad, I like saying our management's bad of these plants. I like to use mullein as an example. Mullin's an invasive species. You guys might have also heard it called like cowboy paper, or like a great wand. I've heard a few different names. But great mullein is usually what I've heard it called around in the West. But collecting that is usually pretty fun. You just don't want to consume it, especially if it's been on a road, because it is a accumulator of heavy metals. It's a bioremediating plant. But you also don't have to really worry too much if you're over harvesting. But having a list of some of those native and non-native species and kind of looking at the ways to harvest responsibly is an opportunity to explore that. I also would recommend always trying new things. If you're curious about something, like I said before, take the time and see where it takes you. You want to know, what is that plant doing over there? Why is that tree growing that way? Walk over, hike over, maybe climb a rock, climb a tree, and see what you can find. One of the games I like to play, or I guess games I like to play, is trying to find the smallest thing I can with my eyes, and then sometimes with my loop as well. You see some really cool botanical structures. And then I also like to say leave no trace. That's a huge part of recreating outdoors. I know that 52 Hike Challenge is partnered with Leave No Trace and really values that. I always recommend making sure you follow the local ordinances and laws and policies in your communities, just because if we all pick plants, especially, wildflowers and some of these more unusual species that we might come across, it's just a responsible thing to say, okay, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna, take a lot of plant matter. I'm just gonna sit here and observe. That's also valid. And then the final thing I like to say is have a lot of fun. It's more fun to just let loose than try and like control how you're interacting with something. I know a lot of professionals in our industry are like really, and I do this too. I'm like, oh yeah, let's like really get this name down. Let's like nerd out about this. But it's also, you can just appreciate a plant for its beauty and just it's living. It doesn't have to be serious all the time. So I've also sent a PDF of this presentation to Carla as well, so she's welcome to share it or have this as a resource, since I do have a lot of resources on here if y'all want to really dive into education or want to learn a little bit more about some of the opportunities that are around. I've got a whole list of websites here. A lot of them are kind of comparison tools that, professionals like me use. But they also are just really fun to get to know, and it's a publicly funded resource that y'all should know about. A lot of them are like libraries full of plants. I've got the Champion Trees Registry, or like the National Big Tree List. That's an awesome thing to go check out while you're hiking. I got to meet a 3 bristlecone pines on my hike this weekend with my husband. It was so much fun. I'd never seen a bristlecone pine before. I hadn't even clocked it until my husband's like, that tree looks weird. And I was like, man, I wonder if it's a bristlecone pine. And then I looked up and it was. So, you get all these really cool opportunities to see these kind of things. And it's nice to have a goal if you can go see a large tree. There's also Botanic Gardens Conservation International. There's a lot of resources on there about seed saving. And then also, if you are a homeowner or are a steward of a tree, I always recommend looking at the ISA, or International Society of Arboriculture website. There's a lot of free resources on there on how to take care of your trees. I'm a certified arborist as well. So I see a lot of unfortunate tree death and damage that is easily preventable. Typically in our area, it's drought, but in other places, it's too much water, or it's, mulch volcanoes. I see that a lot, or people topping trees. But there's a lot of resources on here for that, especially regarding trees. And if you guys are more of like a plant nerd type of person, I've included a list of books I really like. I'll be publishing a blog post pretty soon about like my big botanical resources list. That'll be a lot more comprehensive than this as well. It'll have a wide variety of things. It's going to have like literature, so like some of Robin Wall Kimmerer's books, um, some poetry, things like that on there too. Not just like hard scientific like floras, but I've got those on there too. Very much needed. And then I've also got some learning opportunities for y'all. So every week I publish a weekly International Society of Arboriculture CEU post. So it's an opportunity for anybody to learn about trees. It's mostly geared towards people in the industry to build their knowledge of trees. But I think it's valuable for anybody who wants to develop a closer relationship to the trees around them and learn a little bit more about how they work. Or if you have people that are interested in making a career change, I recommend getting involved with your local native plant society and getting some education there, spending some time with them. There's a lot of people there who are dying to share their knowledge and want an audience and would love to teach you all about the plants. Like there's so many folks that just want to go on plant walks all the time. Coming up is a lot of tree plantings across the world. Saluting Branches is a like memorial tree planting opportunity run by I think it's Rainbow Eco Science now. But there's a lot of tree plantings happening around. It's tree planting season. Don't be afraid to ask your local extension office for resources as well if you've got questions about, trees, plants, especially agricultural plants, or if you have questions about fruit trees, because we're kind of getting the season of pruning and preparing for next year. And there's a lot of information, and don't be afraid to reach out to your regional experts as well. If you live close to like a, land grant college, or you've got somebody in your native plant society, most people are very cool with you emailing them and asking a couple of quick questions. There's a lot of state employees, a lot of, city employees, and a lot of, well, in some areas, federal employees that really love answering people's questions. I know I love to get people's questions and help assist them in what they do. But that being said, if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me. Go on my website. There's a lot of free resources available. Right now, I just published Tree Plotter. I don't know if y'all are familiar with tree inventories, but it's becoming a big thing. We're actually being able to track tree health across the nation due to some of this technology. It helps us pretty much do a census for trees and other plants as well. But it's incredibly helpful, helps us determine, biodiversity indexes, all sorts of things. And I recently made a plant key based on that data for New Mexico for urban trees. And then we're using it in Tree Stewards, which is a local urban forestry kind of educational crash course in arboriculture event. So, but there's a lot of resources out there. If you guys ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. And we really appreciate that. I love the passion for the plants. And you made me think about something that I think, how about just going for a hike one day and just identifying, 3 to 5, plants and like learning about them, or maybe it's one per hike. I mean, that's a really fun way to get outside, be mindful, and I hope you all got some good ideas as well. There were a couple of quick comments that I'll just quickly share. Sherry said she loves using the Seek app. Are there any other suggestions on apps to identify plants, mushrooms, and so forth? And I do know that there were a couple of people that commented. Sherry Johnson said iNaturalist. I don't know if that was the only one. I thought there was another one. Yeah, iNaturalist seemed to be the next most popular comment.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course. So I know AI is becoming really popular in, most people's wheelhouse now. Especially if you're going to be cultivating it's one thing if you're using like AI, some kind of AI app to identify species. It can be like a fun way to kind of guess against yourself. It's like, oh, I think it's in this plant family. Let me see what this app says. iNaturalist is really the only one I recommend using for that purpose. Like Seek is one of them. I believe it's like a subsidiary of iNaturalist. The reason I recommend that is because it's run by scientists for scientists, pretty much. There's live people on there that confirm species and let you know if it's like, hey, we need some better pictures. It's the safest option. I like using Facebook quite a bit too, honestly. If you get on any kind of like local plant identification Facebook page, that's a great place to do that, or even a tree page. Your local extension office's page is a great resource. I also really love it's a website, it's called Wildflower Search, but every single state has its own app, and it's based off of publicly available data through Herbaria and some other resources. So for New Mexico, it's like New Mexico Wildflower app. It works without cell service. It's you can save the list that you make. Like I used it all the time in the field. It's kind of just like a little pocket flora. It's a little bit it can be a little finicky. So definitely have some patience with it. But once you kind of get the knack around it, it works really well. It's not quite as user friendly as iNaturalist, but it's free and it's a great way to start seeing those plant patterns. Whereas like iNaturalist doesn't really take you through that process. It's just kind of like, oh, here's the plant, here's this information. If you want to kind of learn more of the process of learning how to ID plants, that's a great resource. I'll always recommend getting some like general field guides. Sibley Field Guide is a really good one. Um, Audubon field guides are really great. Really anything you can find in like your local hiking store is typically going to be really good. If you go to your local hiking store or gear store, you're going to have a lot of people there who have a lot of opinions about what they recommend. But looking at local regional resources is usually your best bet. And also finding a plant teacher too. That's like one of the best ways you can learn is finding like a neighbor or something that'll teach you about the plants around you. Did we have any other questions? Oh yeah, iNaturalist is crowdsourced. It's awesome. 90% accurate. Yeah, for sure. It's really accurate. I do love it. There's also these great opportunities coming up too. I think the BioBlitz usually happens in the spring, and it's kind of like pitting communities against each other, trying to find or trying to identify the most species as possible, and that's really fun to do as well. Botanical Research Institute of Texas, they're great. Brit is awesome. Lots of great folks there. Yeah,
Thank
cowboy paper. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, lots of great comments here. But if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to get you to somebody local to you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that.